We have a presidential candidate here tonight, Mark Everson from Mississippi. I got an email recently from Howie Morgan, right? Your senior campaign. He has a long history of working in great places like the IRS.
We ran fine when I was there. I didn't hear anything about
that. He's never held elected office, but he's had big jobs in public and private sector and solid experience in three huge issues facing this country: immigration, taxation, and national security. Everson is the CEO of the American Red Cross, was CEO of the American Red Cross, and is currently vice chair for Alliance Group, and he is here from Mississippi. Flew in just a few minutes ago, so welcome, Mark.
Actually, via Iowa. That's all right.
Via Iowa? You're making the rounds.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. I'm going to give out, got a little card. Pass a few things out. Some of you folks I've seen before. Thank you. You're probably saying, why do we need another candidate, and especially an ex-IRS guy? So I'm going to take a few minutes and tell you a few things about myself and answer any questions you have. What I bring to this contest is unique because I bring a combination of private sector experience. Most of my career has been in the private sector, but also government experience, not elected experience, but federal executive branch experience. And it far surpasses any of our other candidates in terms of that executive branch experience. I actually have some New Hampshire experience too. I went to school down near the coast of Exeter for 3 years, and from 68 to 71. And then my folks shipped me off to Zambia, of all places. And I was a poultry farmer, so that was quite an introduction to life. I mean, there was no internet in those days, there was no CNN. And you corresponded by letter. Those of us who remember letters, remember those? That's a long time ago. But that's how you got the word out. So I cut my teeth on working over there. And I came home Republican. If you remember that period of time, it was a very challenging period with Vietnam and all the dissension. And I came back with a new appreciation for our country and for our role in the world. And when the Democrats put up George McGovern, those who were around will remember this, in 72, and I was in college and I voted for Richard Nixon. Not that many kids in college voted for Richard Nixon. That's just the truth. Started my career in accounting in New York. Audited big accounting, big companies, International Paper, Texaco, some of the biggest companies, so rounding in numbers. I'd studied history, but I then went to night school, got a master's in accounting, CPA. And then in 82, at the age of 27, I went to Washington to join the Reagan Revolution. There's a lot of genuflecting to Reagan. I'm the only one who disrupted their life and went to Washington and worked for Reagan. I was in meetings in the Situation Room when we were talking about the deployment of nuclear missiles in Europe. I was working in public diplomacy, something called the U.S. Information Agency. And I helped put on the air the radio broadcasting, the surrogate broadcasting in Cuba, Radio Marti. I had the privilege of being in those conversations several times. In the second term, I went over and worked for conservative icon Ed Meese. So as you remember Ed, he was the Attorney General, even the alter ego, really, to Ronald Reagan. And we remain friends to this day. And after about a year on his staff, he asked me to go over to the INS, where I supervised all operations. I was in my early 30s, but I supervised the Border Patrol, I supervised all the detention and deportation, all the refugee operations around the world. And after that, at the 88, went out into industry, joined a big company, big packaging company, American National Can, I ran a factory on the south side of Chicago. Many of our candidates talk about manufacturing. They've been in a lot of factories for a lot of photo ops. I have a slight but permanent ringing in my ear from my years in the factory. I went to Turkey. I ran a business in Turkey. An Islamic country, secular Islamic country known as Iran, as we all know, has drifted and become much worse. I've lived in France as well. This company, ultimately this big American packaging company, was purchased by Pechnay, a big French company. And so I've lived in three very different countries, so I understand not just industry, but also international competition and what it takes to compete. And then in 2001, I went back into Washington, the second Bush administration. I was the deputy on the management side at OMB, working for Mitch Daniels. So, Mitch, he was the first budget director, and he became the governor, ran for governor of Indiana. Right now he runs Purdue. So I helped create the Homeland Security Department. We, after 9/11, you may remember that he had this small office with Tom Ridge, and pretty quickly concluded that that wasn't working, so they asked 5 of us to take a look, come up with a proposal, which we did. That led to the creation of Homeland. After I worked on that, oversaw the transition of many of the operations into the new department, the president asked me, he nominated me to go run the IRS. And I did that for just a little over 4 years. And there were no targeting scandals during my watch. If you remember that time, it was quiet. We went after the big abusive shelters, the big investment banks, and the other problems. So that's the background. And nobody else has that combination. We've got some outsiders. When I decided to do this over the course of 14, I sort of analyzed, I think that there was a thirst there was a repudiation of career politicians that was afoot. And I felt that I fit into that, but that it was nice to have somebody who actually knew something about the government. Actually, that's how you usually find people to run something. You try to get people who know something about the business. I know a lot about the business. You'll see on the card here, I've got a program. You go on the website. There's 6 key points. If you say, what would I do as president, the most important thing you need to remember is I have a track record, a clear track record of executing the laws as written, not as I might wish them to be. And that's what we have to get back to. That is constitutional governance. A lot of our candidates now are saying, I'm going to tear up this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Well, that's just as bad as the president's done this. You've got to look at the laws. I mean, 4 of our senators have navigated us into this position where we have something that has a deal with Iran that went through the Congress, as opposed to just an executive agreement. So we've got to be careful with how we execute the laws. That's the first job. The president's got to keep the country safe and secure, but the powers of the presidency, while significant, are limited. Part and parcel of that, I'm running only for a single term. I'm the only one who's been an appointee in those 2 different administrations. They were each very different, I can tell you, but what they had in common is by year 3, everybody is sitting there worried about the re-elect. That's the focus. And they're saying, are we going to go back to New Hampshire so soon, or back to St. Louis? We just got here. Susie's finally adjusting to middle school. And you know what happens? They start taking decisions based on political and self-interest and not the national interest. So I say enough of that. And I'm going to put together a team, and for 4 years we'll just do the people's business. You get elected because you obviously have a set of views. You come from the Democratic side, or Republican side, wherever. Once you have that job, you're working only for the American people. That's your job. On the economy, I say we put in a hybrid tax system. It's a plan based, it's a framework based by, or put together by a fellow who was a Bush 41 Treasury official, now a professor at Columbia. I think it makes sense. You put in a consumption tax, you can take 150 million Americans off the income tax rolls. Individuals earning 50 or couples earning 100,000 won't have to file a return anymore. Those who are earning above that, their rates will come down. The income tax goes back to what it was a century ago, which is to say it's just for the hiring. And then what happens though is you can also reduce the business rates on the big corporations so you can be more competitive overseas. And the benefit of this, in contrast to proposals that several of our candidates put forth, which are trillions of dollars short and will drive us to Greek-like debt, this proposal is revenue neutral. It brings in as much as we currently bring in. And it is distributionally neutral. Things like the fair tax and flat tax are very attractive, but the problem is they are regressive. They're a change to where they're going to disproportionately benefit the well-to-do. I don't think that's going to sell politically. This proposal is crafted to get about as much coming in from the upper end, about as much from the middle, about as much from the bottom end. I think that works. Spending, we have to get control of spending. If you're following the news now, the deficits are down to about 2.5% of GDP. That's a lot better than when we were 8, 9, 10% just a couple of years ago when we were at the bottom of the recession and we were spending all the money on the stimulus. But those numbers won't last because people my age, I'm 61, as we age, we draw more benefits, that entitlement spending will squeeze out everything that we want to do with the Navy, the FBI, the parks, it doesn't matter. We won't be able to do it because they will just squeeze it. So we need to do what Reagan and O'Neill did in the 80s. We need to make adjustments in the future. We do not need to take the benefits or reduce the benefits of people who are drawing benefits now. But I will not increase the taxes on the upper end, but I would means test some of these programs and stretch out the eligibility. And I look at it this way. I have a young son, that's why I'm down in Mississippi, and I've got recently signed up for a 15-year life insurance policy in case I am not around. If he doesn't get that money, I think that's a good thing. And if you do well enough so you don't need the insurance, that's a good thing. So I think we've got to do that. We've got to get the banks lending again. The community banks have been dying. And if you look, they've gone down in number. They're the ones who are closest to the small businesses. And if you look at the financial system, the mega banks, they've all the assets they have, the concentration, and they've been operating lawlessly. We have to hold big business accountable when they break the law. I was a part of the corporate fraud task force. We sent Scrushy and Lay and Everson and Kozlowski to prison. Now there's a moment here, the Obama administration finally, about a month ago, said we're going to start looking at individuals and charge them instead of the companies cutting these fines. Maybe you read about this. Well, they've got a test case with Volkswagen. This is atrocious. If you follow what Volkswagen has done, it's just plain fraud. And I can tell you, having worked in a big industrial business, you do not change and put in technical processes without a lot of sign-offs. That's how big industrial firms operate. It's not some rogue trader, the London whale, who does things on his own or something. This had to be done by the corporation at senior levels in the engineering operations. And these people should be put in jail. And if the company fails, so be it. There are plenty of car companies around the world. We can't have people operating this way. I say that we should put in a program of national service. I'm very concerned about this fraying of our bonds with each other, what Lincoln called our bonds of affection. I would put in a program of national service, including a military component, because we have a too profound civilian-military divide that has taken place over the years. Very damaging. I also believe that if we had a small portion of people who were conscriptees, they would form bonds. The kid in Greenwich, Connecticut, where in Connecticut, the income levels are twice what they are in Mississippi. Mississippi's the poorest state where I live. Connecticut's the richest state in terms of income. You're twice as likely to be a Gulf Era vet if you live in Mississippi than you are in Connecticut. So we've got we've got this civilian-military divide. The burden is unequally borne. And I would also say, yes, sir.
What if someone doesn't want to be insured?
Well, we've always had a standard for conscientious objection, and I think that's the right standard. And frankly, what I would also say, let me come to that in just a second. I'd say the second benefit of this, frankly, is I think that those of us who remember Vietnam, we had robust debates about our foreign policy, which we no longer have, because everybody had skin in the game. I think we'll be much more sparing in the use of our military, which is appropriate, if we all know people or have relatives who are subject to or have actually participated. A lot of people suggest to me, and I'm open to this idea, that the program should be broader, as some countries have with national service. You can do other things, teach, work in parks or other things, and maybe that's a way to discharge it. I feel that the standard should be the conscientious objection. I don't want the rich and powerful to just get out of this the way people have in the past. But it's obviously something that is controversial. I get a lot of tough questions on this, particularly in Iowa. I had some tough questions. But I think it's a subject, we've got to do something here. Because right now, we've just farmed this out to others, and we don't worry about it. As close as we come to it is when we're in an airport, in an airplane, and Delta Airlines says, let's have a round of applause for our vets, or people who are in uniform. And that's not it. That's not going to do it for us over time. The last thing I'll talk about, immigration. I ran the immigration system. I have 4 children, 3 of them are immigrants. One's a Cambodian refugee. I met her years ago, actually, when I was in the Philippines with the INS. Her father was killed by Pol Pot. She came and spent time with my family, and ultimately I ended up giving her away in a Buddhist wedding ceremony in Long Beach, 1995. She's a wonderful woman, wonderful husband, has 2 daughters who call me grandpa, are doing great in Fairfax County, Virginia. I have 2 kids who are Turkish orphans, who were adopted when I was married, when we were living in Turkey. So I believe in the legal immigration system. I also have the young guy is Oliver. He's a fresh natural child. He was at 53, so quite an experience. But anyway, I believe in changing the legal system so that it favors those who contribute economically instead of family unification. That's in our self-interest. Help us grow, help us prosper. I believe in controlling the borders. We did a lot to control the borders down on the California coast when I was here. The biggest problems when I was at the INS were along San Diego, if you remember that period of time in the 80s. You've got to tighten up the border, you've got to tighten up the visa issuance and the monitoring of people, because as many of you would know, almost half of the people who are here illegally, they came here illegally, but they overstayed their status. The key thing that really has to happen is E-Verify. Does anybody here not know what E-Verify is? Anybody? Well, that'll do the trick, because what it'll do is it's mandatory. Before Tony gives me a job, she'll have to check that I really am Mark Everson, and I'm not using Mark Everson's name and social security number from Mississippi, and that'll make it hard. Yes.
Who else besides immigrants should be on that list of not?
Well, everybody will have to. Anybody who gets a job, you'll have to check.
Well, besides immigrants, who else should be on the list?
Everybody. Anytime an American would go, or somebody who's here, to get a job, the employer would check to make sure that that person is legitimately authorized to work. The difference is, the reason that the 86 Act failed, and I oversaw the implementation of it, was Congress wrote in an exception. It said if the employer saw documents that appeared legitimate, then the employer was off the hook. So it's just like a kid going into the bar, with the fake ID. You go in and you've got what appears to be a legitimate social security card, appears to be a legitimate driver's license, and then the employer's off the hook. So this would change that. So then you're left with this question. Yes, let me just finish. I thought you were raising your hand. No? Oh, okay. Just saying hi. Then what happens is, so if you do that, I believe if you take those measures, you're going to control the illegal immigration. You're going to really dampen that problem, change that problem. We have to do that. So you're left with this question of what do you do with the 11 million people who are here? You need to, for sure, get the criminal aliens out of here. The criminal aliens are the people who have violations of law other than immigration status. They've done some physical assault, whatever it is, serious crime. Yes, get them out of here. But I believe in the path to citizenship for those who are constructive members of our society. And I said it for several reasons. One, I think that having run the immigration system to deport these folks, you're not going to have mass deportations. Everybody gets an individual proceeding. It would be almost impossible to do it. It would be incredibly disruptive to many of our communities, and it would disrupt our economy in a very negative way. But there are other reasons I believe. I think that if you look at the quarter, it says, what does it say? It says, in God we trust on one side, it says, in pluribus unum on the other. If we just leave these people sitting here, we're not going to get back to our tradition of assimilation. We need to have these people learn English, and let's resurrect the tradition of assimilation. I want us all in this together as Americans. Because if we're going to confront radical Islam, we're not going to, I've lived in France, where they have no tradition of assimilation, and they aren't dealing with it. We've got it, we're going to deal with what we have to deal with as one people. Let me say one more thing and then I'm done. What this shift does, a couple of these shifts, what I'm asking is, there was a young president, John F. Kennedy. I remember when I was 6 years old, every school kid in America knew what he said in that inauguration. It was, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I'm suggesting that that's what we need to get back to. So that's the program. I'm delighted to be here in New Hampshire. I respect the people of New Hampshire and Iowa, because I don't think you think that the election could be purchased by the Wall Street donors and by the special interest. And I recognize that it's an uphill climb, but I think what I offer is some very traditional Republican positions and the constitutional conservatism, but also something that could win in the Senate. Yes.
So there are a lot of politicians that say that, you know, the ones that are contributing here should be allowed to find the pathway. The thing is that's wrong with that in my mind is that what is contributing when the first premise is here, they've broken the law to be here in the first place.
Sure.
How do we ignore that? Why do they get a pass when they already cheated us in coming in the first place? And I get the fact, you know, they needed to feed their families. I mean, hello. But it is such double speak that it's almost painful to hear right now. And the fact is, a lot of these folks do not want to assimilate. They have no desire to assimilate. They want to milk the system. And there's no way other than to deal with that reality to give the people that came here legally the justice, or the people that are trying to be here legally, the justice of playing this fair. It's not pretty no matter how you look at it, but it starts with the premise that those that are contributing, well, how are they contributing when they were here legally to begin with?
Well, the hardest part about this is the fact that they violated the law and that you have people who have waited online to get here.
Right.
But we as a people are free in our democratic process. Not what the president's done. I take exception. I think his executive order deferring enforcement proceeding was beyond his authority and illegal. I do not support that. But we as a people, democratically, are free to make a decision to embrace them and to say, if you've met a standard, you clear all your taxes, you don't have these other violations, we can make that decision and do that as a democracy. And obviously, some people don't believe, many people don't believe in it. I think that what we're doing now is very divisive. And if we want to win, we cannot accept the rhetoric of Mr. Trump, who has said, he's called the Mexicans rapists and criminals. And look, that some are. But to say, as he implied, the majority are, is divisive, and it doesn't get us anywhere. Look, I had a sister.
I've seen the list of the atrocities that are going on by illegals, and he is pretty damn close to being right.
Sir, with all due respect, he is wrong. And I've seen the studies, I've looked at the studies.
Maybe in this process of what he's saying is wrong, but the crimes are there.
Look, there are some horrible crimes, but look, we can't.
Some,
Listen, sir, with all due respect, my sister was a victim of a serial murder in 1982. The man was black. That doesn't make serial murderers blacks, and it doesn't make a majority of blacks serial murderers. But that's what he said. He said
But
that
that's not,
those.
that is
It's a
not-
different point, it's a
it
different
is.
point, and we have to get those criminal aliens out of here. What we need to do is, we need to fix ICE, which is not doing its job. I helped create ICE. I insisted when we did the creation of the new department that we put all the 1811s, all the criminal investigators in one unit, so we had a strong interior enforcement presence. We haven't used it under this administration. You're right, we've got, those crimes are horrible. What happened in San Francisco was horrible. And we have to fix the sanctuary city piece too, obviously. But I'm just saying, we can't take some of these issues and let them be so divisive that we can't make progress. That's what I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with you that there are horrible crimes out there. There really are. Yes, ma'am.
On the E-Verify, I had a comment on that. You were saying, well, gee, Tony hires me, she's gonna have to do the
Yes.
E-Verify. Okay, let's say Tony's got a little coffee shop.
Yeah.
And she hired people come and go because
Yeah,
that's
right,
the way
right.
it is. I mean, honestly, isn't that an undue burden on a small business person to do such a.
Well, I think it'll all be,
understand that.
yeah, I mean, that is the tough piece about it. The interesting thing about the Senate bill that came through, it made no exceptions as to size. The Affordable Care Act, you'll recall, at least has some exceptions for the very smallest businesses. This does not. That's a tricky question. We got to figure out how to deal with the small businesses, but I tend to think that, especially as the world changes and more people go online, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be going online to do this check. I don't think it needs to be that burdensome.
Okay.
But we clearly got to think about the smallest businesses for sure. Other questions? I know you've been very patient, and look, these are tough issues, and I'm talking about the tough issues. We need to talk about the tough issues as a country and have sober conversations about them. And some of the candidates, even on our side, they're just offering the happy talk. They're going to fix these things, and it's not that easy. It's not that easy. Yes, sir.
I have a really stupid question.
Nah.
I know, oh, here it comes, right? So, we've seen a lot of candidates come in and out of here. You know, I've been part of this committee since it started, when it started in the man's kitchen, when we were just basically PO'd what was going on.
How long ago was that, sir?
7 years ago? 5 years ago? That's my mother-in-law.
Feels like that,
We were all there. Right? And I've seen a lot of politicians come up and, you know, they give their spiel and all that, and what, you know, their views are on immigration and all that. So let me ask you this. I kind of get the feeling from you that you kind of want to play to win on the immigration thing. You know that if we say we're going to send them all back, that that's just not a winning proposition.
Right.
What if you could just make it so? What if you could just say whatever you decide to do will be so? And what I mean by that is, if you could send them all back, would you?
No, I believe in the position I've articulated.
What if you had no political ramifications whatsoever, and you could just clap your
I
hands?
make the decision that I articulate, that if people who've been violating the law otherwise, I'd get them out of here. But if somebody truly is productive, and we can do a solution so that we send a signal to the world that future illegal immigration has got to stop, then I would.
With Reagan.
Well,
We did that with Reagan.
no, the reason the Reagan law failed, as I said, the Reagan law failed because the employer sanctions didn't attach because of this fact that you could use a false documentation. I helped design the I-9. Anybody who's had a job in the last, whatever it is, 30 years.
I looked at that and go, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, no, and people
So,
think.
as long as you guys bamboozle me to a point where it looks like it might be valid.
Yeah,
I'll drop it off.
that's That's the problem.
In a way, it's kind of good for me, isn't it, as an employer?
It's not good for the country, it's not good for the country.
I'm not hiring illegal aliens, but, you know, it's like, I
But
don't want to have the government.
plenty of
tell me
people
how to-
are, plenty of people are, sir. You may
Oh,
not.
you're right.
And so, I mean,
I don't want the government to come back on me later and say, hey, listen, you didn't dot that I, and you didn't cross that T, now you get to get thrown in jail even though I did everything wrong.
yeah.
You know, which is bad enough anyway as an employer.
And look, I do think my position has evolved on this over the years. I probably would have had a harsher position 10 or 15 years ago. But the key here is it's got to be a balanced solution. I think you've got to do it all at once. I don't like at all what Marco Rubio was saying. He's pretending that he's still for the pathway system. He's just going to do it in 10 or 12 years. Well, that's crazy because that's way outside the window of anything we're talking about. I think we've got to solve all these issues. We've got to have a package that we do it all at once, and both sides have got to give. But it is a really tough issue.
I respect that. What about the Syrians? What about the 200,000 Syrians coming in? Would you
Well,
like that?
I would bring in some of the refugees from Syria because we, as much as anybody, bear responsibility for this mess. Now, this is President, but it's also the Republican Congress because the President 2 years ago wanted to take some action. He had zero support in his own caucus, as we know, but our guys too said they brushed him back. Now, I'm a little surprised because this President, he's turned this topsy-turvy. Usually the presidents are they use their executive branch authority very significantly overseas and then not at home. This guy's been just the opposite. He runs red lights all the time at home, but then he refused to do what he claimed was right. So when the red line was crossed, he did nothing. And that chaotic, horrible situation with 4 million Syrians outside the country and others displaced within the country, we bear responsibility. Now, we've got to check people and refugees, but I oversaw, we were still taking people out of Southeast Asia in the 80s from the Vietnam War. That's how I met Amrong in a camp in Bataan in the Philippines. She wrote me a letter, and the rest sort of happened over a period of years. But there, we do bear some responsibility for this. So I wouldn't take all of them by any means, and you've got to be very rigorous in how we look at it. But we've got to fix the foreign policy. I neglected to sort of say much about that, but what we have to do there is we have to change from what this administration has done, which is to engage without preconditions with our adversaries, to go back to where we stand for our own interests and work with our allies. And that isn't where we are right now. And you look at the problem of now the Russians are going in there and trying to prop up Assad. It's a whole series of issues. Any last question? You've been very generous with your time. And, well, I'd like your help. So you can see, you see the website there. And if you believe in any of these issues, or you want to send a message that that you can still come to New Hampshire, drive through the night to, I'm so glad it's not snowing out there yet. Because that's a pretty windy set of roads, you agree, right? Yeah. So thanks so much, and I've got a piece of paper here, I'll put it in the back if you want to sign up and get some emails. But thank you for having me.
Thank you.